Hey everybody, this is Ian O'Byrne. I'm sitting here with Julie Wise. It's the calm before the storm. We're getting ready to head out for LRA and the craziness that ensues at the Literacy Research Association conference. For our session on the Walk My World project, we wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about the research that we've been conducting and some of the interesting things that we've been finding out. So I'm going to quickly shift over to the PowerPoint and see if this will actually work for us. And so basically, all right, make sure this button, there we go. The title of our paper is Risky Business, Developing Educators' Digital Identity Through Social and Connected Online Learning. As we unpack the data, we started to see this element of risk and risk awareness and aversion. We'll talk more about that. We think it's pretty interesting, and we want to continue to make sense of it. We had multiple theoretical perspectives that impacted our work. Obviously, we looked at multi-literacy's design and looked at critical literacy and how we use digital text and tools to read the word and read the world. We also we looked at literacy and identity. A lot of the work from the Moji, Luke, Davies, and Street piece, but looked at what happens when we identify ourselves through the text that we read and write. And then finally, this was hard to find. We looked at cultural theory of risk. So there's a lot of research that we've unpacked that we think bears impact on what we've been trying to understand here. We had 3 research questions. Number 1, we wanted to figure out what does our participant base, our group of pre-service and veteran teachers, how do they engage in creating and sharing digital content? Secondly, we wanted to see how working, and it was important to us to have them play. How does working and playing with digital content influence their engagement in this connected learning environment? And then the third research question was, how do the pre-service and veteran teachers perceive creation and sharing of content as they construct their digital identity and that all-important digital identity of an educator? So Julie, what did we do?
Well, we worked with pre-service and veteran teachers who all attended the same university. They were taking graduate classes, and the majority of them were going to be or are secondary content teachers. However, we did have 2 elementary teachers. They were a range of ages between 19 and 59 years old, and 78% were between the ages of 19 and 29. And of course, we had a pretty equal range between females and males. And the important thing here is we really wanted to look at how the gender and age and content area responded to this content, this connected learning. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that we had a range and a variety of ages and content areas and gender. We used what we call the SLIDE, which is the Survey of Literacy and Identity with Digital Environments. And that was an online survey, and we gave that to them anonymously so that they could share their information freely. There were multiple choice, and there were also open-ended questions. And of course, we did this on Twitter and a variety of social media contexts using the hashtag #WalkMyWorld.
Very cool. So what did we see?
Well, for our first question, we really wanted to know what were they doing before they started the Walk My World project. And as we were doing this, we found that the majority of their the majority for most people, were just simply to share experiences with family and friends, and they did this through Facebook. And as they did this, most of them were just simply reading and watching and just sort of keeping in touch with what was going on in the world. They were not really creating their own content. But if we dig a little bit deeper into the content they actually were creating, we found that most of the time they were creating things for their own reasons. They may be taking pictures, or they may be, corresponding with just one person, but they weren't really creating digital content to share in the public arena. So they may be taking pictures, but they weren't really sharing a lot of pictures via Facebook. They may be reading a lot of blogs, but they were not writing their own blogs.
So that's one of the issues that we see, is that our students, our educators, but also the K-12 students are working with, most of us were consuming content. We're not really creating and sharing it.
Correct.
So the second research question, what do we see them doing in this environment?
We asked several different questions, and there were they weren't mutually exclusive, which means that the participants were able to choose as many as they felt applied to them, and most of the participants felt that they learned a variety of tools. So by working just solely within the Walk My World project, in order for them to engage, they had to learn how to use the tools. And then, of course, in order to use the tools, then they had to create content. And from that creation of content, they actually started to really think deeper about how to use tools, how to create content, why are they creating content, what exactly are they sharing. So they began to think much deeper about their engagement. And there was only, out of almost half of the participants found positive use for engaging in Walk My World. There was only 2 who felt resistant to engaging in social media. And in the beginning, there were 2 people who had never engaged in social media. So we assumed that maybe those 2 people who didn't feel like the Walk My World project changed their understanding, we thought maybe it would be those 2 people, but in fact it was not. The 2 people who felt like it didn't, Walk My World did not change their thinking, were people who had already been engaged in social media and online learning and really had a strong background. So you can see along the side there were several quotes about how the Walk My World project really influenced their engagement. It helped them understand Twitter. It helped them widen their understanding of text, that it's not just simply written words, but it can include any type of digital content. And of course, that they really wanted to make sure that what they were sharing really represented them and their identity.
That's pretty interesting to me. It's almost like you want to, before you start the activity, suggest to your students, okay, which ones of you, for the next round of Walk My World, which ones of you are pretty savvy online and share stuff online, and see the hands that go up. And it's like, okay, for those of you, basically ignore the next 4 weeks. Come back to us in a little bit. We need to focus on the people that don't have the experience first to give them that experience. So the third question, how did they think about their idea of, being a digital educator or their identity as an educator?
I feel like this was the biggest revelation in our research that we were doing, and that was the idea of identity. And we found that there were 3 factors with educators who were creating identity while they were engaged in this. So of course you have the majority of the participants felt like they established similar identities. So their identity offline and their identity online were very similar. They tweeted like they talked. They posted pictures about everything they were thinking about. And the reason behind this was they said it was authentic. Look, if this is who I am offline, then this is who I should be online as well. The second factor was there was a group of participants that established separate identities. So their identity offline was different than their identity online. And their rationale behind this was their audience awareness. They said, look, you know what? I'm a teacher offline, and I know that the audience is public, and it could be some of my students, it could be some of my family members. And so I want it to be separate. I don't want them to realize that I smoke and that I drink and that I stay up late and I swear. So therefore, I'm going to decide to have separate identities. I'm going to be a teacher offline, and I'm going to be a teacher online, but at the same time, offline, I may also have some other private things that I do not want to share with people. And the final one was this, and again, this was just a small number. They just were resistant to creating any type of online identity. They said, look, this is a class project. I will do it for this, but once the project is over, I'm completely done. I see no value. I think it's complicated. I'm not interested in having an online identity. So those were the 3 factors that came out from participants engaging in Walk My World project.
And so I think it's interesting that we have the resistor population always fascinates me the most. Why did they not buy in? Why didn't they see value there? If we want to bring this large scale to all students. So we had two phases of analysis. The first phase was we looked at the slide data to figure out what was happening from the survey. And then we went back to the slide data afterwards, and we looked at the major themes that Julie just talked about. And we took a look at our researcher and observational notes. And then finally, we looked at the work that they shared online. And we found three overarching themes. Now, keep in mind, this PowerPoint is still an early version. We present Friday. We will have the full version online. We'll have the full paper online. This video will be online. You can have everything that you want to about this data because we're excited about it. So we took a look in phase 2, and we saw three themes that occurred from all of the data set when we revisit it at a later date. The first was some students profited from the experience. Some novice learners, as Julie said earlier, had a chance to play with and explore and test out these digital tools in these connected learning environments, and it worked for them. They were able to profit from the experience. Some of the students, obviously, as Julie mentioned, had more experience and did not gain as much. They didn't profit as much. But for the most part, the first theme is that it worked. It helped people experience and figure out what to do in these environments. The second major theme that we saw was that educators were able to, as they constructed identity, they were able to develop their voice and think about their role as an educator, their digital identity in these online learning spaces. They're able to think about their voice, develop their voice, and consider audience and audience awareness. And this is hugely important as we work with educators and work with students, and individually we work on a personal level to figure out what are the codes and what are the discursive elements and what are the rules in working and presenting and sharing online. The third theme is for the people that profited and for the people that developed their voice, there was also this very interesting trend where participants considered the risk involved in interacting. We know that our schools at times and online, it tends to be highly litigious. We are very considerate about what to do and what to say and what not to say. We've heard all the horror stories. And so a lot of our participants were aware and made choices and code switched and made, about what they would share online and what they would not. They didn't want to negatively affect their identity. They wanted to be positive, but they also wanted to be very aware of the risk involved and what people would say about that content. So what I wanted to do was, so we have the discussion slide, but Julie, what to you were the really interesting things that came out of it?
I agree with everything you said, and just that whole level of in deeper engagement. You first go in sort of on that surface level and you just say, I'm going to try this out and check it out, and oh, this is sort of interesting and this is fun. And then as they were doing that, they started to have sort of a deeper thought, wait a minute, the stuff I'm creating, other people are seeing and they're responding to me. So that's exciting, and that sort of motivated a lot more people to engage even more. But at the same time, it goes to that third level where they sort of stopped and said, okay, wait a minute, other people are seeing what I'm saying. And what does that mean? Do I want to make it just professional, or do I want to entertain the audience? And that then, again, decided how they were going to respond back to others, because they just weren't posting comments. They, of course, were reading other people's comments and learning from the ways that they were using digital tools. And there was sort of this reciprocal relationship between using and reading others as examples and then responding to others as well. That was interesting to me.
I think it was also interesting, like I said before, the idea of the resistor, but I think it was interesting that the people that, like you said earlier, the people that came in and they had this understanding of what they wanted their digital identity to be, and the people that knew what they did not want it to be. And they would, I've seen this with some of my students in our 6-year program, they'll basically say, well, this is who I am on Facebook. As you said before, like I drink, I smoke, I swear, I watch Sons of Anarchy or whatever, and that's not what teachers should be doing. And so I want to create this like vanilla, inauthentic version of myself. So it's sort of interesting how they were actively choosing, which to me is really cool, that they're making decisions about their identity and actively choosing how they wanted to represent themselves in different spaces. Whether or not that can happen due to the tools, that's another talk for another day. I also think that it's interesting, one of the interesting things was that we initially thought that we would see differences based on gender or age, or we would, the younger teachers, those digital natives, they're savvy, they get it, but that wasn't really true, was it?
No, and actually the two people who I had said in the beginning who had never done social media, those actually fell between the 19 and 29 age range.
These kids need to get online. They need to share more. One of the last things that I thought was interesting was, as you and I were talking about this, we didn't see the risk element coming up.
No.
We did not see the risk element and the risk awareness piece coming up. We've reached out to the community. We've reached out to the Association of Internet Researchers and the XMCA listserv. We've talked to a bunch of colleagues. We've been on video conferences with people trying to make sense of it. And it's really interesting, these intersections of identity and identity construction and discourse in connected learning environments and risky behavior. And so we've been trying to unpack that. I think we still are trying to unpack it. My initial thinking was, wow, this is really cool and it's interesting. But lately my thinking has been, is this just a general element involved in identity construction? Does the online part not really matter? Are people always considering in different environments, what to say, what not to say, how to act, how not to act, how people will, respond to them, what audience, will say to them? Are we always involved in this risky behavior? Are we always considering it? And if so, then that partials out, that eliminates the online-offline dichotomy. That eliminates this idea that online is different. And that's a good thing for us that research these online digital spaces. The more, at least in my humble opinion, the more that we can eliminate that and say, you know what, the online identity is pretty much the same thing as the offline identity, to me that's a good thing, because that means that we're not privileging one over the other. What did you think about the risky behavior and the identity construction?
Yeah, I agree that you're asking really good questions, and I do definitely want to hear other people's ideas and experiences. So if there's anyone out there who already is seeing this, we'd love to hear from you in an email or shoot us something in Twitter or something. But I think, yes, if I think about identity offline, yes, there is that thought of identity offline, but I think it's the public space possibly that sort of intensifies the need to really think about it. The thinking offline before, as you grow, you sort of change and you realize, oh, I'm not that person anymore. You look back at something you did. There's not that intensity of, oh my gosh, right now I am putting something out there and I have to make sure that in this second that tweet or that Facebook post or that picture is not going to harm me, it's not going to harm someone else, it's not going to make someone angry, it's not going to be offensive. At the same time, there are people who take that risk and say, you know what, I am going to find that picture, I am going to write that blog because I want to be offensive and I want to get people angry. And so that's my thinking, and I definitely want to find out a little bit more, is that intensity because it's public, and so many people viral, viral, it could go viral, whereas offline, just those people who you're surrounded with could possibly see it. So it's not as intense.
I definitely agree with you. I think that's the whole impetus behind the right to be forgotten in the EU right now. It's that, sometimes things happen, and when you're online, it never disappears, it never goes away.
Yeah.
And right now, as a society, we're trying to figure out what to do with that. So if you have that photo, of you just doing something stupid and wearing a stupid hat at a stupid party, does that live with you forever? can
Right.
you ever get rid of it? Whereas if you were at that party and somebody didn't tweet it, nobody would know.
Right.
So once again, the paper will be available. We present Friday. We'll put this video and the PowerPoint and the paper all together in a blog post. We'll share it. All the content will be made available for you. We will share the items, and we'll dump the initial results. The results are already online, but we'll dump the item results, the items and the results in a blog post as well. So all the content will be available for you. So those of you that are watching, the 3 of you right now, thanks a lot. We'll share this, and we'll see you soon. So when are you flying into LRA? Tomorrow? Today?
Today.
You heading today? Is it snowy and rainy there now?
It has not started yet, so I hope I can get to the airport before it starts.
All right, good. All right, well, let me kill this off.